Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Progress Report, a weekly program about economic development and local government in and around Green Bay and Brown County. I'm your host, Bill Meindl. A big thank you to Political Radar for creating, sponsoring, and producing this new show. While much attention has been paid of late to developments in downtown Green Bay, such as the Hotel Northland and the Shipyard, it might be said another major project has been more quietly chugging along of late. It's the Rail Yard Innovation District, the former Larson Canning Company property along North Broadway in the Broadway District downtown. It's a large site, about 22 acres all told, stretches down 4 city blocks, and includes open land as well as 4 once industrial buildings. Some of those buildings, generally 3 or 4 stories tall, have been renovated, some not yet. The master developer for the Rail Yard Innovation District is Green Bay-based DDL Holdings LLC. Here to talk about the rail yard, what's happened so far, and what's on the drawing boards for this major multi-million-dollar development in downtown Green Bay is Paul Belschner of DDL Holdings. Hello, Paul, and welcome to the Progress Report.
Hello, Bill. Thank you for the invitation to share information about our update and progress over by the Titletown Brewing area, now known as the Rail Yard Innovation District.
Terrific. Glad you're here. Let's clear up a few things to start with, Paul. I said you're from DDL Holdings LLC. What does DDL stand for?
DDL is a derivative of what was at one point going to be Donald Driver Lane, turned into Donald Driver Road.
Way,
over and that which was Pearl Street back in the day. So that was the impetus for the DDL. DDL itself is the parent entity, if you will, that purchased the land from the city of Green Bay and on Broadway Incorporated in January of 2014. We made our first land purchase, and there's 2 partners inside of DDL, one being the Titletown Brewing Company, which is Brent Weicker and his group, and the other being Base Companies, which is my organization. So, Titletown brings the history of, and have been there since 1996. They were one of the first groups in that particular area to take on a existing facility and say, we're going to renovate this and make this a destination. And they've been there for 21 years. And then our group brings the real estate development know-how to keep us chugging along, as you say.
With DDL, is it a 50-50 split between Titletown and Base Companies?
Yeah, it's 51-49 is really the way that comes down. The voting is all equal against, it's really Brent and myself are the 2 managing members of DDL Holdings.
Okay.
There.
Who's got the 51?
Titletown Brewing Company. That was bank dictated. They are a major tenant. And when you're looking at bank underwriting, that's important to say, okay, what's our repayment source? And that significantly falls upon the success of Titletown Brewing Company, especially in the early years of the rail yard.
Now, as you mentioned, Paul, you're the president and CEO of Base Companies, and your offices are actually located in the rail yard as well. What does Base Companies do?
Base Companies takes all the pieces and parts and components to a real estate development and assembles them, hopefully yielding the catalyst to make a development real. There's so many pieces behind the scenes that folks generally don't see in terms of land control or financing or tenancy or economic development incentives or development agreements. So if all of those pieces aren't held together to get the project out of the gate, so to speak, you never see the project come to reality. Base Companies, they welcome, the more difficult, the better. That's a differentiator. We're proud of what we do and bring it on.
Are you working strictly in the rail yard, or do you have projects elsewhere?
No, the rail yard certainly takes up a lot of our time, right? That's a significant development with multiple components, but we've got 3 or 4 other developments that are going on with different municipalities at the same time as well.
I also said DDL is the master developer of the rail yard. What's a master developer?
Master developer is there to make sure that what is referred to as spot development doesn't take place, that little pods don't don't happen that aren't planned to work together. Somebody has to be there to adhere to consistent building aesthetics, parking ratios, traffic flows, types of tenants that are synergistic with each other. So if somebody has that plan and holds that together throughout the development, you end up with a much more synergistic, successful development at the end of the build-out.
And as master developer, DDL may do some developing itself, or it may, if this is the right word, subcontract to other subdevelopers to do work on the site. Is that right?
That's correct. So far, south of Kellogg Street, DDL has been the landlord for all activity, meaning that everybody's a tenant that's participated, including Titletown Brewing Company, base companies. They all are the tenant. DDL Holdings is the landlord. What we know is going to happen north of Kellogg Street on the 15.77 acre piece of land is inevitably we're going to have groups, development groups, that are going to come in and say, we would like this much land because here's our project and here's where we think we can be a piece of the rail yard development district. That's happening with housing projects. It'll happen with a hotel project. So that will come in the future.
Now, the rail yard started out as Larson Green. Why the name change to the rail yard?
History, not to turn our backs on Larson Canning Company. And certainly there's a lot of history. You're only a person or so away in our community from knowing somebody that knew somebody that worked at Larson Canning. But when we looked at the plans of what that area used to be, and Brent Weicker is quite the historian in our community, he had the old rail yard plan, and that 22-acre piece of land was significantly rail yard.
For the Chicago and Northwestern
That's correct.
Railway.
Correct.
What's happened so far, Paul, at the rail yard in terms of building renovations?
Well, as I mentioned, our first acquisition was about 5 acres of land south of Kellogg Street in January of 2014. So we commenced construction in March of 2014. Now, keep in mind, those buildings were vacant for approximately 10 years, and it wasn't easy even just to get to the land acquisition piece, right? Sure. There was points of time where we thought this just isn't going to happen. And so finally in January of 2014, we were granted the opportunity to acquire the first 4 contiguous buildings and 5 acres of land. The project would not have gone forward without the catalyst piece, and that happened to be Titletown Brewing Company.
Expanding that into the
Brent had looked at many different options to take advantage of their industry explosion at that time of craft beer. Mm-hmm. And they have great beer, they have great name recognition, they've got a good process. So now they said, okay, we're gonna increase our capacity and get into distribution. Brent chose out of a number of options, many of which would have been more cost effective to brew the additional beer. He chose to go inside of the former Larson Canning building. So that one decision made the project real. We acquired the land and buildings. We started with the tap room and the brewing inside of the first 2 buildings, which are the southerlymost buildings. And I'll tell you, 13 months later, we had leased up every square foot that we had available in that first phase.
That's remarkable.
And that really was a surprise to all of us. They usually don't go that way in that manner. What we found out is that market demand was there. And without that catalyst piece, we would have never gotten to that point to find out how many folks were looking to be a participant inside of these historic renovated warehouse buildings with clearly a trend of urbanism, density, walkability, breweries, brewery tours. Those were all success factors. So that was the first 2 buildings. And by October of 2015, I think there was another significant decision along the way made by Titletown Brewing, and that was to add the roof tap to the project. That we had that in a planning idea, but no commitment from when we first started renovating the buildings. What they saw was that the event space was going well, the brewing was going well, the tap room was going well, the depot was going well. So they said, you know what, we're going to do this. I look back at that now and say, wow, that was transformational. To put that roof tap on the 4th floor of what we call Building A.
Rooftop beer garden.
The rooftop beer garden has given Green Bay a reason to come look at all of our progress in downtown Green Bay.
And it's a great view from there as well.
It's fantastic. So we get folks quite frequently that'll come back and say, wow, this doesn't feel like Green Bay when they're standing and looking out over Green Bay. And they mean that in a very respectful manner. Maybe they have been to the cannery, or maybe they're just, for the first time seeing the rooftop beer garden. And I think that that's been really important to our community, and that'll continue to be a catalyst to what we have going on in Green Bay.
Now, all the work so far at the rail yard in construction has been south of Kellogg Street. Can you say, Paul, about how much roughly that has all cost to date?
Sure. After that first phase leased up a little bit quicker than we had anticipated, we took on the second phase, which took then all 4 of the contiguous buildings that go right up to Kellogg Street, which total about 130,000 square feet of rentable commercial real estate space, which in Green Bay real estate vernacular is a pretty sizable project.
Sure.
And we're 100% committed to on those facilities.
100% leased up?
That's correct. We've got some build outs on the first floor, the retail engagement. Now we've added the barber shop, Hand Can, Sandra Rank Real Estate with the Keller Williams Group. So to go with, we've got a winery that we're working on finishing up their build-out plans. So retail clothing for the first floor. I think that'll all go well with the cannery and with the tap room. When you ask about cost, we're about $20 million so far into the renovations that we've completed to date.
How many vacant former industrial buildings are left in the rail yard, and when will work on those start?
So now you're asking about north of Kellogg Street.
There we go.
So it is a long process, but in December of 2017, we were fortunate to finally close on the land acquisition when we talk about north of Kellogg. So that's the other 15.77 acres of the original Larson Canning campus. That property has 3 additional historic warehouse buildings, 2 of which are rather significant, one that really isn't. It's a connector piece.
A connector.
That's correct. So there's another 150,000 square feet of buildings that are north of Kellogg now. So this year you'll see what we call Building R. And when I say A, B, C, D, R, S, T, that's the old labeling program that Larson used.
Oh.
When and there's a lot of buildings that aren't there anymore.
Sure.
They had disassembled and recycled a lot of the old Larson Canning warehouse buildings that used to be spotted around the campus there. But we've stuck internally to the old labeling system, and we get the old plans out from Larson themselves, and to see how everything connects even below ground. And that's where we're getting the lettering mechanism that we use. So you'll see Building R getting renovated. It's actually in process, but the way that the renovation works is you don't see a lot of progress until later in the timeline continuum.
You have to do environmental remediation.
We're working on all that right now. They've been in with X-ray equipment. That's where they make sure that the structural integrity is there to do what we want to do. We're going to put a golf simulator on the top of Building R. We think to go with the rooftop patio, and we've got a small rooftop area for our tenants in buildings C and D, which is already renovated out there in a fitness area. We look for those amenities and especially rooftop activation that we think will be successful. So we've got some plans for the 4th floor, which would be the roof right now of Building R, to add an outdoor seating area, little fitness area, and then as well a golf simulator that we think will be welcomed by our office tenants that'll be in that project.
So you have some potential tenants lined up for that set of buildings.
That's correct. We have a stronger backlog of tenant prospects for Building R than any of the buildings we've done so far. So
That's great.
very, very appreciative of that. We don't take that lightly. Certainly the office market has shown up and said, we'll support this project.
We like this place.
Correct.
Now, we've been talking about the renovated buildings past and to come, but there's also a wide swath of open land in the rail yard to the east. When do you think we'll start to see new construction in that area?
2018.
Here we go.
Here we go. What we'll see first would be the start of the road infrastructure that's not there. What we refer to as Kellogg Street, when we acquired the property in 2014, was a dirt road and kind of a pothole-filled dirt road. And we did a small asphalt overlay just to clean it up out of respect for our office tenants that were moving into the buildings. Now we've got a full-fledged commitment through our development agreement to put the entire public infrastructure into the site that's necessary to start to reach that land to the east that you're referring to. You know, the existing buildings, we really could service them off of Broadway. They sit immediately adjacent to the right of way, and there's sewer and water out there. But what you're going to see in 2018 is Kellogg Street coming into the east. So the existing Kellogg Street, but it's going to be a beautiful landscape boulevard, you know, as compared to what it is now. It'll come from Broadway. If anybody's gone out of Kellogg Street onto Broadway, you probably drag your bumper when you come out of the big hole that's there now. That'll all be corrected and come into the boulevard. That'll go east. And then what it'll do is it'll intersect with Donald Driver Way, which actually ends as a public road currently right in front of the depot building, right in front of Titletown Brewing Company.
Sure.
That'll continue then to the north. There's two significant obstructions, if you will, in our street infrastructure. That's the two power poles that are there that go out to the
high tension wires.
That's correct. So those become roundabouts. That's we really couldn't financially consider moving them. They're quite burdensome financially. So we made them roundabouts. So if you can picture, if you're in the campus where that first power pole is, which is pretty close to where the Quonset hut sits currently, that'll be a roundabout where Kellogg Street and Donald Driver will come in. Then Donald Driver will continue north, and then it'll intersect with Bond Street, which will come to the east, you know, across Broadway.
So Bond will be extended in.
That's correct. So Bond Street is roughly, you know, if you've seen the area lately, or for the last number of years, it's where the 53-foot semi-tractor trailers sit that are used for the recycling company. So those will, you know, eventually get displaced in lieu of this progress, but that's where Bond Street will come in, and that'll intersect to the east with Donald Driver. So that, along with a fairly significant retention pond that'll be along the railroad tracks, and all of the curb and gutter and sewer and water and lighting and vegetation, walking trails that go with the public infrastructure, will then give us the opportunity to access the land to the east.
And when will the street work start? Pretty soon?
It'll be out for bids to the street work contractors in the next month. So whenever they choose to start come spring, we'll welcome them into the site. There again, you don't see the real progress for quite some time. There's a lot of earth moving that has to take place. We've got some environmentally sensitive soils on site, but we've got a plan already in place and approved with the DNR and all of our partners that you need. The Mao and Associates is our civil engineering partner. Stantec helps us with some of our environmental issues and soil capacity issues, things like that. So we're ready to go.
Now, beyond the street work, the plans are to have some new buildings as well north of Kellogg Street.
Correct. If you can envision Donald Driver going north between Kellogg and Bond Street to the east of Driver, so in between Donald Driver and the railroad tracks, we're going to have our first townhome building this year. So that's going to be very exciting, 2018 as well. So we've got a multi-phased townhome project that'll be new construction that we're very excited to
Will that
have.
be similar to the rendering that was shown last year of what that area might look like?
I think so. I think some of the building sizes might have changed slightly, but they're generally 2 to 3 stories high. We've got some larger units, and some are more efficient. Call them condos that would be stacked 1, 2, or 3 stories high, trying to get a broad range of demographic for folks that are interested in owning a product, a housing
Now,
product.
these would be
downtown.
townhouses and about 20 units, is that right?
Correct. No less than 20 units. We'll decide what units are being. Our first building is 5 units. That'll be constructed in 2018. From there, we're going to start to judge what the marketplace is looking for. Are they looking for something that's 900 square feet or 3,200 square feet? I think I can guess, but we're going to let that play out and make sure that we're building a product that the market will show up and purchase.
And in addition to the townhomes, there's a multi-level development that potentially would go in further north of that.
That's
And
correct.
you know all about that.
That's correct. I should have brought my show and tell materials here. We're getting geographically, we're all over the place. But now, so now we're going to go north of Bond Street, and so if you can picture Bond getting extended to the east, that's in the area of between Mather and Bond. What you have currently there is the NEW Community Shelter. So we have Terry's Shelter there. Nice looking facility, very well run, well respected shelter.
Needed.
So what we're going to add as a development transition and complement on the north is a group that we're working with called TWG Development out of Indianapolis, Indiana. They're looking to do the, you probably remember the name. The name is
Broadway Loft?
Broadway Lofts. I forgot what name they went with. This is an example where they just acquire the land and it's their project. So 4 stories high, I think 107 units, but it's workforce style housing. So it appeals to a broader spectrum of demographic, gives a lot more folks the ability to come and live downtown. Those are the pieces that, there's a lot of folks working on those projects behind the scenes. They need WIDA tax credits. So that award should come out in March. Clearly, if it's unsuccessful, it might be back to the drawing board
Sure.
on a project like that. But that's the nature of development, is not knowing that you're going to actually come out of the ground. So we're working diligently to give them everything they need, because we truly welcome the product type and think that it'll be a really nice northerly boundary to the Rail Yard Innovation District.
Can you share any other plans about the rail yard, Paul? I know there's been talk in the past of the possibility of a hotel, you mentioned it earlier today, or a corporate office headquarters. What do you think?
Sure, I think that's the future. I think infill will lead to a lot of projects that we might not even be thinking about yet today. But
Sure.
we've gotten 4 or 5 unsolicited inquiries from hotels. Frankly, early on, I thought that was probably a little bit earlier than we could properly address those inquiries. So we know who they are. We stay in touch with them at the right time. We'll say we think we're ready with that. What I refer to today is that we're setting the boundaries. We're really going north, south, east, and west. If you look at what's in the middle, there's room for a lot. If we're successful with density, there's 5 or 6 different housing types that I think you could see in the future. One being your traditional market rate apartments. We still feel that there's a large demand for residential living in downtown, both from a leased perspective or a purchase perspective. So we think some live-work units might be appropriate, maybe a simple 2-story upper, lower, live on one, work on the other, small lot, but ownership based. I think that we could get some young professionals pretty interested in a product like that. We go out as far as saying, why wouldn't student housing be appropriate as we continue to see some involvement with UWGB and NWTC into our downtown area? I think we could get there too. That's not going to be 2018, but we certainly have those in the backs of our mind.
In the thinking stages.
That's correct.
Initial work on the rail yard, Paul, as you mentioned, started in 2014 and led in part to the expansion of the Titletown Brewing Company. So the rail yard is already 4 years old. When do you think work will be completed, if you had to take a guess?
Well, when you say already 4 years old, we think that 4 years went by pretty fast.
Absolutely.
So very proud of what we've accomplished for a project that, again, was well-intentioned, but certainly challenged for that 10-year period of time when there was limited or no activity taking place and the buildings were becoming fairly deteriorated. So we always say if we never go another step, we've made an impact. We certainly think there's a lot of steps to take. Our development agreement takes us through 2025. Okay. So I really do think that there could be a 10-year project timeline here. When you look at some projects that we use as roadmaps, such as the American Tobacco Campus in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, they ironically, they have a ball stadium there. The Durham Bulls are down there, and they have the North Carolina University down there. They have the same red brick that the Larson Canyon buildings were. They have Lucky Strike is in their smokestack, because it was an old tobacco campus where ours says Larson. So you don't get there overnight. I think in 10 years, we should really see a nicely built out urban environment that supports young professionals, that fosters the creation of the next generation of job, that attracts and retains young professionals within our community. Walkable, dense urban development. I think we're on our way.
Well on your way. Is there anything else you care to mention?
Well, like I said, we're very proud. That we're trying to be good stewards. Brent and myself and Jim Kratowitz, our base companies team, we're all local. So sometimes I guess you could say local to a fault, but local, and we're proud, that we've seen a lot of these historic warehouse buildings disappear. And it wasn't because of lack of effort to try and save them sometimes, right? Sure. So knowing all the pieces that it took to make this successful and the folks that had tried prior, we're very proud. We've got these buildings in a condition now that we think, they're ready for the next 100 years. So bring it on. What else can we add to the Rail Yard Innovation District? And there's so many folks that are approaching us now knowing that it's not just talk, it's real. And so many folks haven't seen it. The folks that used to work at Larson Canyon, we welcome those folks to contact us. And hopefully they're proud too to see what we've been able to do in downtown Green Bay.
Well, congratulations on all you've accomplished. It's a terrific project.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for episode number 3 of the Progress Report. Thank you, Paul, for being on the program. And thanks to executive producer Dan Jones, producer Jacob Jones, producer Darian Goheen, editor Christian Rivera, and technician Serena Woyak. Be sure to subscribe to Political Radar on YouTube, join the Political Radar community group on Facebook, and you can support this show financially by purchasing Political Radar merchandise from our shop. For more discussion, check out Blind Partisan, plus Green Bay development news on Skyscraper City. This episode of the Progress Report was recorded February 19th, 2018. Thanks for watching. See you next week.